2012. The banks, I was asked to chair a number of groups where there were banks and sort of large financial companies, and they were a case of, what is social media? Our clients aren't on it. Our clients don't want it. We don't understand it. It's a reputational risk and it's a regulatory risk. And it was something that individuals adopted and then companies adopted. And I mention that because I see real similarities in how crypto has come along, that actually, individuals adopted it. Banks will say it's a reputational risk, it's a regulatory risk, we don't understand it. But ultimately, I believe it will have mass adoption. So I came into the space, as I say, in 2017. And whilst I was with that startup, which is now BCB Group, we had a look around at the women who are in the space. And particularly in 2017, 2018, because that was really sort of 2018, obviously we had another crypto winter. It was amazing, the women who were in the space. And I'm not suggesting the men weren't, I just didn't do the research on them. Multiple degrees, multiple languages, career histories that anyone would be, so proud to have. And then they were still paving their way in this industry where they had nothing else but the vision and the belief of what they were building. So I thought, well, how do I hang out with these women more often? And is there a way I can support more of these women and attract more women into the space? And the answer was yes. One of the biggest things that these women are asking for is to more easily be able to network with each other. That if they were in their same vertical, often they'll be speaking at panels so they can get to meet other women in their space if they were in legal, for example, but it wasn't so easy to meet other women in other sectors, particularly to be matching up with female founders. So then I decided, okay, I would launch the Bigger Pie. I also see this as, I love the promise of blockchain. If you look at where we've been historically, we thought the internet was going to democratize us. We thought social media was going to democratize us. And we've got 12 men who own 50% of the world's global wealth. And we have a planet that's dying. So clearly whatever we've been doing historically isn't working. And one of the things that I love about the power that this technology has is to really revolutionize the way that we think, the way that we interact, and how we choose to value things. But the problem we've got with a lot of the incumbent systems is they are built by a few, and they're built for a few. And if you look at Fintech is meant to be disrupting the financial systems, but actually, all the reports show that Fintech is being built by men, funded by men, and building products for men. So you tell me how that's revolutionary or transformational. I don't think so at all. We're just repeating the same mistakes. And that's something that I don't want us to do within blockchain. So we're seeing a massive generational transference of wealth right now. We're seeing another wave of new technology, and we're seeing an opportunity, and I think we're running out of time for us to take on board opportunities to radically change the way that we think and do things and implement and value things. And historically, women have been left out of that process and that equation. So let's make sure that we don't make those mistakes again. So that's what we're looking to do at the Bigger Pie. I'm going to just share a little bit more time explaining why it's so important that we need women. This is not a nice to have. This is not, well, why should half the population be excluded? All of those would be valid in their own place, but we really do need women if we're going to survive on this planet, for us and for future generations. Placing women in leadership positions tends to drive innovation, it increases productivity, it boosts profitability. There's a study by Deloitte that talks about that. There's studies by Boston Consulting Group that talks about investing in female founders. You often invest less and you get more returns at a faster rate of return. Fintech has a gender diversity problem. It has 3 separate but connected problems. Too few women work in fintech companies. Too few fintech companies have female founders or even female leaders. And that's not because the women aren't stepping up. They're just not getting the funding. And females are underrepresented in the fintech user base. So we should be bringing everyone that we're looking to provide solutions for at the design, development, and deployment table. And as over half of the population is women, then clearly we need to have women at those tables and having those discussions. We need women in energy to fight climate change. We need more women in the energy sector. Only 15% of employees in oil and gas are women, and that number shrinks dramatically, unsurprisingly, as we go up higher paying technical jobs. And globally, despite women being disproportionately affected by climate change, women do play a crucial role in climate change adaptation and mitigation. Women have the knowledge and understanding of what's needed to adapt to changing environments, to changing to the conditions, and to come up with practical solutions. But we're still a largely untapped resource. We're restricted by land rights, by lack of access to financial resources, by lack of training and technology, and limited access to political decisions so we can actually make effective policy changes. And the other point that I wanted to make about why we need women, I could actually speak for half an hour about that, but we need women invest 90% of their income back into their family and their community, especially in education, health, nutrition, creating, again, ripple effects way beyond the initial investment. I think it was Ghana, there was research done. So across, particularly around the equator, there's an awful lot of people who make their living through farming. The majority of cash crops go to men, and the land ownership also is largely in men's hands. And then women grow the food crops. When there was a bumper yield in the cash crops, then the GDP went up, and the spending of the GDP that went up was on alcohol and was on tobacco. In another year, because of the conditions, the food crops went up. And again, there was an increase in GDP. But the spending was on education, on clothing, and on food. So if we look after women, then women look after their community. And I don't think anyone can afford to ignore that. And the other reason that this is really necessary is that COVID-19 has definitely been a female recession. Women, if you were disadvantaged before COVID-19, you were definitely more disadvantaged as a result of COVID-19. So in the States, it was a couple of weeks ago, I read a report that said over 330,000 women have been forced out of the labor market in the US permanently as a direct result of COVID. Investment in female-led teams dropped during COVID. We went from a whopping 3% of global VC funding. 11% goes to mixed teams, 3% goes to female-only teams, and the rest, the 89%, goes to male-only teams globally across the world. So this is why it's really important that we looked at all the practical ways that we can address this. So what about in the blockchain space? Well, depending on the reports that you look at, depending on the activity, depending on the region that you're in, this report could be anywhere between 6% and actually up to 42%. So really good news. And definitely since 2017, when I came into the industry, we are seeing the percentage of women who are making up the workforce in the blockchain area growing, which means we're obviously managing to attract women into the space at a faster rate than men. So there are positives that we can take from this. But let's not see another generation of transference of wealth be missed out by people just because of their gender. As I say, if we're going to build truly radical solutions to global problems, then we need everyone at the design, development, and deployment table, which includes women. And what I'm really excited about as well is not just the potential of this technology, but most of the companies, even now, most of the companies that are going to use blockchain probably have not been created yet. So if we can help startups and young businesses to build right the first time, with women in senior positions, with the ability to get hold of talent that is diverse, then that is much easier to build with that culture in than it is to see what we've seen in other sectors where it becomes a patriarchal culture, and then trying to change that is really difficult. So there's lots of possibilities and there's lots of excitement. In terms of the skill sets that we need in this space, we do need people with skill sets across all disciplines, whether that's being an investor, whether that's having financial experience, whether that is through legal, whether that's marketing, whether that's regulation. And 100% we have a huge shortfall of the people who can build it, the engineers. So what we're looking to do at the bigger pie is to be able to address this shortfall in engineers within the blockchain space. We have a 4-step integrated solution. So one is a 0 to CTO program so that we can upskill engineers and CTOs. There's a huge lack of CTOs because all startups are not looking for junior developers. They're looking for experienced developers in this space. One thing that I have noticed, and a number of women in the Big Up High have shared this with me, so it'd be really interesting if you guys have seen the same, but your career trajectory within this space, 1 year is the same as 4 years in terms of where you can come into it and then where you can be in a year's time, because we're moving so quickly. Everyone is developing, transforming, changing, reiterating, influencing at speed. And so if actually your career progression can go up, which is really exciting. So we want the 0 to CTO program and making sure as well we can match the CTOs that are desperately needed. Most companies are asking for at least 3 years of smart contract programming, but it's going to be impossible to do that. So what are the different ways that we can say, okay, we've got people who are senior engineers, we've got people who understand the smart contract coding, and actually we can give them access to a panel of experts who do have the 3 years plus. Because if it's open source that we're dealing with, then we don't have the same issues that companies who are working on proprietary technology will have in the same way. As we're building this 0 to CTO program and putting thousands of engineers through it, we also want to carry on building up our global database of women in blockchain, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as well. The other thing that we're doing is we're doing research. So this is unofficial in terms of, I haven't actually asked UC Berkeley yet whether we're allowed to say anything, but we're in talks. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but UC Berkeley are very interested in working with us to make sure that actually we can look at blockchain companies, how they're set up, how they're run, what barriers to entry there are through a gendered lens. I know that I've spoken to a number of small startups where they've hired a woman or some women in their roles, but the retaining of the women has been very difficult for them. So I'll touch on things that startups can do to make the workplace more inclusive in relatively, hopefully quick and easy ways for them to be able to hold on and retain the women. So, you know, when you hold another woman, it's are able to hire another woman. She's not the only one who's in there. But we need to do research to understand what are the barriers and the entries for women into the space. What are the issues that women have to be able to retain them? Because in the tech sector, women are doing all the work. Women are, you know, they're getting educated in STEM degrees. They are coming into the tech workforce, but after 10 years, they're leaving at twice the rate than their male counterparts are. So there's something different about the experience that women have, and largely that's to do with lack of flexibility. So that's something else that I'm really excited about, is that we've seen DeFi and another explosion of growth in the sector during lockdown. So I think, one, it's been through lockdown, and two, the explosion has been so rapid that if you want to find the talent to be able to work on your products, to be able to take your ideas to market, you can't think within geographical borders. You have to think globally about who you can hire. And that also means different time zones. So this immediately gives women the flexibility, the opportunity to have flexibility at work, to be able to deliver on the tasks and the requirements of what their role is, but in a way that also allows them to manage their care duties, because the reality is women are still burdened with the majority of care, whether that's for children or for elders or for others. So that's really exciting. But we've also got DAOs that are coming up. I was at DeFi Live. I don't know how many of you were perhaps there last week. And with DeFi Live, everyone's saying, you know, DAOs are the next NFTs. Again, there's an issue with DAOs at the moment in terms of attracting and retaining women. So we're also looking at that, so that we can go out and say to you as a startup or to DAO organizations, however you want to form your community or your organization, here's a playbook, here's a blueprint for you to more easily be able to find female talent, attract it, retain it, and what we can do to continue to fill this shortfall of amazing talent in the workspace. I've got some notes that I'm going through, and I kind of feel as though maybe I should show you the slides. But what I can do is I can send it to you guys afterwards. I don't want to do a PowerPoint slide presentation, but it shows on here. Now you can argue, of course, that is LinkedIn the best place to be looking for software engineering jobs, and some people say yes, that's absolutely fine, and other people say, well, that doesn't show, we should be looking at them on GitHub and other open source sites. But there's more research done on the difference between engineers who are male and female if they are on open source sites like GitHub. And unfortunately, the numbers of engineers who are female who are on GitHub is much lower than I think there is in the marketplace. So we need to understand and recognize why that is the case. When women submit their proposals, they're quite often not accepted. But once they get past that barrier, then 100% of their proposals seem to be accepted. So we definitely have some sort of a disconnect there. And the other thing, of course, is that there's plenty of talented engineers who just haven't worked in open source, so they don't have that open source CV for employers to look for. So I think it's important that, particularly when you're looking for the diverse talent, you don't just go to your usual pools to be able to find out where those people are, especially when it comes to engineers. So in the Zero to CTO program, what we're looking to do is we're looking to work with those companies that are already delivering blockchain training so that we can provide CTOs and full stack engineers. We want to be able to work in our sweet spot where what we do is really great, and work with others where they've got the talent and the expertise to do that. Currently, we've got 70 scholarship placements going through the Solidity program. So I'm excited to see that. That's not all women that we're putting through. We have people across 23 companies, 23 countries who are currently going through that program. And what's really interesting for me is that 20% of those participants that responded to the survey are actually either founders already, or they're people who want to be founders. So I think it's fantastic that we would be able to have a way that we can bring people through this. Not just, most of them want to be engineers, but those who don't really want to be, they want to be founders, or they want to improve their standing as a founder building in a tech company. And then we can take those founders as female founders as well, and we can put them through a founder program. So we can see more women-led businesses being funded and being able to get the support and the talent that they need to do. So there is lots of excitement around that. I said I'd talk to you a little bit more about the database that we're building, and then I realized that we're at 7 o'clock, so I'll sort of open that up to conversations and questions. With the database, I have a lot of times people saying to me, we don't know where the women are. And there are, I mean, we've got, if you add the numbers in the different groups, and there are crossovers of people are in more than one group, I do understand that, but we're around 600 women in our community, and we have really high quality leaders across that space. It's been an invite only organic growth, and we haven't really pushed anything. There are about 14 or 15 other women in blockchain organizations. I have a list of them. I'm happy to share that with you. There are plenty of places that you can find women, but I would prefer it to be even easier than that. So to have a good SEO database of female leaders who would be great for event organizers, so we can see these women, we can hear their experiences, they can share their voices, we can make it easy for event organizers to find them. The same system will also be able to tap into journalists, so that journalists can more easily have a range of different voices across different topics, all experts in their field. Cointelegraph have verbally agreed that they would work with us to make sure that these women are given media training, because I think it's really important once you come into the C-suite role that you are able to confidently speak on stage, to confidently speak to journalists. And having media training is a key part of doing that, both in terms of your confidence and your competence. And I'll just sort of finish on confidence and competence, and then open it up to hear from everyone else. Women women judge their competence lower than it is, and men judge their competence much higher than it is. So the competency might be at this level, but men's confidence thinks their competence is up here, and women's confidence thinks their competence is down here. What that can translate into is, as a woman will often not apply for something, a promotion or a new job, for example, she'll apply 2 years after she's qualified for it. But men will apply 2 years before they're qualified for it. And if you think how much change is made in a space like this industry within 4 years, we just can't afford to allow that gap to continue. So I'm doing everything I can do to make sure that that's not the case. And I welcome to have conversations with anybody else who champions the cause too. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bridget. This was definitely very, very interesting. I mean, it definitely touches a lot of the points we are seeing in terms of like the platforms we usually use for recruitment. We find it very hard to find women developers there. So it's really becomes a question of going to the right places. I think we have already 1 or 2 questions coming up here. The first one is from Devon. She's asking, what are some of the groups, projects, companies breaking down barriers to entry for women in the blockchain industry?
Can you read that again for me?
Or Devon, you want to ask yourself?
Yes, that would be great.
Hi, yeah, thank you for getting to my question. I actually have a couple of questions. One of the things is, what are some of the biggest groups or projects or companies that you feel are breaking down the barriers to entry for women in the blockchain industry? So like kind of like which ones you kind of resonate with, which ones you advise women in the space to kind of get involved with, or companies in the space to get involved with, that they can start recruiting more females in the space?
That's a great question. I think you put in the comment there, She256, which I know has got a huge reputation as well. So I wouldn't pick one. I would pick as many of them as you can. If you're a woman looking for more support, I would pick more than one, because each one has a different tone of voice, a different flavor, a slightly different angle. There'll be geographical differences in the groups, which obviously during COVID it wasn't so much of an issue. We've all let down our borders, but it's still nice to be able to meet up. So I've got a selection of them. There are a number of women that I admire and adore, but I think it's down to each person really to find the one that suits them best. In terms of companies looking to be able to work with them to be able to find talent, I know that Women in Blockchain, which Jessie Mehreen launched way back when, she's one of the pioneers of women in blockchain space, has been with Consensus for ages and has successfully funded her project Equality. And actually what was really interesting with Jessie is she turned around and said to me, Bridget, can you introduce me to female investors, please? Because the problem I've got is all my investors are male, because the network for investors are all male. But how can we have more women investors, and how can we have women sharing into the opportunity for the returns that investors have if we don't have more females in there? So I know that a number of them will share job opportunities within the communities, and some of them are a more informal basis, and some of them I think have job boards that you can talk to. But it's not just about putting a job up, right? So if you're looking to how do I change the recruitment process to be more successful in hiring women, then first of all, look at your language. The language that is used, that people read without really consciously processing it, but very clearly read, this is a male-dominated company that I'm going to. This is clearly a job where they're looking for a man and not a woman. So there's language differences. So whenever you're talking about leadership and collaboration, then it's much more much more appealing to women. Whenever you say that you're open to the fact that it doesn't need to necessarily have all of these qualifications, this is your ideal expertise that they have. If you're still interested in applying, have a conversation. That goes a long way to doing it. In terms of the salary, Be transparent about what you're willing to pay. And if it's a range that you're willing to pay, depending on the person's that you end up hiring's experience, then just be transparent about that. But as soon as you say that a salary is negotiable, then you're immediately putting more women off. And there's a valid reason for this. It's because research after research shows that when a very competent, experienced woman who's perfect for the job comes to the table and negotiates well for herself, she's disliked. And when a man does it, they're respected. And you don't hire people you don't like. So remove that barrier, that subconscious, unbiased consciousness from the process. In terms of the language, there's AI tools that you can put your job spec through, and it will tell you how gendered it is. So there's things that you can do to be able to change that. I want us to be able to create, as part of the research with UC Berkeley, a thesaurus. So these are the words that you currently use. Here are the other words that you could use that would mean that you weren't alienating a large subsection of the portion that you're looking to recommend. It doesn't fully, does that answer your question, Devon? I sort of been off a little bit on some separate other things there as well. But for anyone who's interested, I can share the link to the Google Doc that shares all the communities.
Yeah, please do. If you could share that, that would be amazing. But that did answer my question for now. I know that I have a couple of follow-up ones, but you can just answer the ones that you feel ready for.
Thanks. Yeah, we would definitely really appreciate to see that document, because in fact, even that advice in terms of the language, I can already say, like, I've written a few of our job posts and I never thought about these things. It's just not something, you just, like, I guess, think about necessarily.
Yeah, well, like, actually, it's actually really weird because, like, even by like default, I switched, like, he's the developer, he's the CTO versus she's a project manager, she's this. So like changing your language into like a he, she, or a they, or like a neutral language actually invites more people to conversation. But it's something that we do just by like default, and it's kind of programmed into our brains, and we don't actually think about the impact of the language that we're using and things as simple as a job advert.
Yeah.
The other thing that you can do, it's called Team 50. Again, I'll talk about these resources and I'll follow up and share them with you, so you can all, you guys will send an email out to everyone and they've got them. So I believe it's Team 50. I think it's a French company that is looking at changing the gap with the gender roles for largely technical positions. And just read through the way that the company talks about itself and how the job is advertised. And you can see chalk and cheese. So you've got good examples. So you can use the tools, but you still don't know what a good example is potentially, right? So then you can look at Team 50. And it seems to me that when you look at I would have confidence as a woman applying for a job there, because it seems to me as one, is that platform has vested to make sure that it is actually a safe space for women to go into. And that the companies that they are allowing to advertise their positions for aren't just lip servicing the fact that they're for inclusion. So also find places where you can advertise your vacancies, where you've got the leveraged trust of the recruitment firm, company, or jobs board that is looking to put women into inclusive environments.
Thank you, Bridget. I think the next question we have here is from Caitlin. Caitlin, you wanna just go ahead and ask?
Yeah, I was just interested, Bridget, in learning a little bit more about the zero to CTO process and just what that would look like.
Indeed. So ideally, you're Londoners, so I don't know how many of you use Citymapper, but ideally what we want to be able to do is, doesn't matter where you are on this journey, you can say, this is where I am in my career and this is where I'd like to get to. And then we can let you know what experience you've got, both in leadership skills as well as in the technical skills that you've got. Ideally, this is the end goal that we want to get to, tell you what your market value is for that role, and then suggest a number of ways that you can get to where you want to get to, because it's not a linear path. And also you might want to turn around and say, actually, I wouldn't mind having a family in that time frame, or I'd like to achieve this before I have a family, whatever it might be. Or, I mean, really, we're having to completely reimagine what we're doing. We're going to have to upskill and reskill so many times throughout our careers that you know, you might want to say, I want to have something that I can have a mini retirement break and then come back into it. So whatever that journey is, in the same way that you can either walk it, you can cycle it, you can scooter it, you can get a car, you can get a bus or a train, you know, there are different ways to get there, and they'll get you there at different speeds. Then that's what we're looking to do. So we'll plug you into the training that you need. If you need a masterclass on having difficult conversations, then we'll put you into that. We'll work with you to be able to work with hackathons so that we can help to promote leadership roles. So it's all of these things. It's not a training program that gives you the technical skills. It's everything around it that is missing: the mentorship, the peer-to-peer, the connection with those who are going to employ you, or understanding how you can actually be self-employed and do consultancy work, or go and work in DAOs. And it's just removing all of those obstacles, at the same time working with the organizations who are interested in that, so we can give them a playbook and we're not sending you into a hostile environment. Does that give you more color around it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget, for that.
Thank you. And just before we get to Devon, she has a few follow-up questions. I think Roxana also has a question. Roxana, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, sure. Hi. I'm just wondering, for those of us who are not in like development roles or not don't want to be founders, do you think there will be an opportunity to kind of shape the industry from other departments, or is it too early for that yet?
100%, absolutely 100%. I don't think it matters on your position either. We have a platform now that anyone can share and anyone can speak, and if people are attuned to your message, then you know, don't worry that you might be at the beginning of your journey. You can imagine what it is that you want. You can share with other people what that looks like. You can figure out how it is that we can get there. And 100%, we just need to hear your voice so we can support it.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. And Devon, you want to go ahead with your questions?
No, I actually think that Bridget answered a couple of them through
Okay.
discussion.
There's one about creating women blockchain meetup groups, sections of, or secludes women from attending the usual or other blockchain meetup groups. I have not found that to be the case in the experience of the Bigger Pie and other women. What I've seen recently, now that we're opening up to going to larger events and in-person events again, it's so tiring being the only woman there, or being so few women that when you walk in, you might as well be the only woman. That can we now have a buddy system? It's so nice to actually be able to show up at a blockchain meetup where we can talk about the industry, and it just be easy for us. I mean, you guys never have to worry about this. You know, you never walk into a meeting, you never walk into an event where you're one of 10 out of 300 women, 10 guys out of 300 women. So it's really difficult to understand the mental load that it takes when you walk in somewhere and there isn't that diversity of people who look like you around there. So for me, it's a nicer, I've seen a lot of people have it as a nicer space for them to come in for the first time to a physical event, find somebody else that they can then go to another event for, because they may have gone to an event and just gone, whoa, I'm not sure where I fit in here. So I think they're complementary. I look forward to a day when we don't need them at all. But right now, we definitely need to be able to create safe spaces for women to be able to get together, to have their voice online and in person.
Yeah. On that note,
because I mean, like we have the women in blockchain events, and they're always incredible and they're amazing. I've attended a lot of them, but there are never any men at those events either. So I mean, like those.
I don't know the events that exclude men.
No, so we're not excluding men, but I think by
No.
like predominantly putting the title "women in blockchain," men already immediately feel uncomfortable to attend set events. But we're also going to change the industry standard if we don't invite men to like participate in changing the actual like status quo of making women feel more comfortable in the normal events.
So let's make a concerted effort. Any man who's on this call, consider yourself already invited to the Women in events. And if you're not sure, just reach out and ask us. And we'll make sure to make a more concerted effort to make sure that when you see an event like that, you know that you're welcome.
Please do. Please, yes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, on that note, actually, we just completed Y Combinator with my startup CoinRule, and the percentage of female founders in our cohort was 12%, which is like really shocking, really, really bad. So I think there's a lot of, it's not even just crypto and blockchain, but there's
No, it's not. It's across
so
every
much work,
sector.
so much work to be done. But one question from my side, I mean, obviously crypto is developing crypto and DeFi, developing a very like particular type of internet culture, and some of it is like incredibly funny, really positive, but obviously some of it also kind of comes from this like Reddit, 4chan world, which is not necessarily it's a bit of, it feels a bit like a boys club very often. What are your thoughts on like what to do about that, and how do you think like it's something that currently is not really positive for women to participate in?
So this is where I think the DAO work is so important, is to understand, if DAOs are going to be the way that we form companies and organizations and communities and everything else like that within this space, then we definitely need to make sure that we get in now, and we have a more diverse experience of thought in age, gender, race, socioeconomic background, responsibilities, to be able to come in and form what that looks like. There's definitely an issue at the moment because these young 20-year-old guys don't have other responsibilities really. I mean, depending on how long they've been in crypto or what they've done, they might have just earned a whole, millions in wealth in crypto, and they can sit on their computer all day, every day. And that's what we're seeing quite a lot of, is this expectation that you'll be in this meeting and you'll be there all weekend. Well, who really wants to have a working environment where they have to be sat at the computer all weekend, let alone has the ability to do that? You've got to get outside and do other things, and you probably have other responsibilities. So we need to make sure that these cultures aren't forming to the point where it's impossible to change them. Language, I think, is really important as well. So this standard that my male counterparts see no issue with at all, when you have rage kick and rage quit. It's like as soon as you put rage in front of something, it already has an impact on the language. And if putting competitive in your description for your job spec is enough to put women off, then putting rage before standard terminology isn't going to entice them in. So we definitely need to make sure that we have more than one voice coming in and shaping what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And actually, like a small follow-up question on that, because there's also quite a bit of this anonymous people culture forming, which I find super interesting, and I think that that's quite cool. And do you think that's something that actually helps women, that in an internet environment where really no one cares who you are, where you come from, what you do, and you are literally an anonymous figure, it kind of almost is a bit liberating? Do you think that's the case, or it doesn't really matter?
The theory looks good, but the reality isn't showing that to be the case. So just because you don't show someone's name or their picture doesn't mean to say that other things don't give people away. In terms of gender, quite a lot of these communities then will, in DAOs, for example, then will meet on a Zoom call or in Discord and put the video channels on so that your gender identity is being revealed. And what we're finding is, rather than it leveling the field, what it's allowing is these anonymous users to be more aggressive when they don't like something, because they're hidden behind an animosity that allows them to have a freedom of speech that doesn't seem to respect who they might be voicing that to.
Fair enough. So do we have any more questions or comments? There's a question from Bella Roberts. Bella, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Bridget, for being here. This is a really insightful conversation. It's my first Crypto Monday, actually. So yeah, I've just heard a lot of people talking about DAO, and sorry if I missed the start of the session, but I did a lot of research into Decentraland, and I know that there's a DAO growing there, and the mana token actually contributes to the voting rights that you have, whether or not that's right or wrong. So I mean, in the real world, is that really right? The richer you are, the more your vote counts. So I don't know whether we should sit back and observe these movements or try and do something about it before it becomes too entrenched. But yeah, when we're talking about DAOs, I just wondered whether, so excuse my ignorance, but is there a universal crypto DAO at the moment regulating the community and setting these guidelines, or is it per token, per project DAOs that you're referring to?
So the ones that I'm referring to, if anyone here, I'm not a DAO expert by any shape or form, so if anyone is here, please step in to answer the more general technical question or question asked about DAOs. But DAOs are kind of everywhere, and they're popping up everywhere. So if you look at Harmony One, the protocol there, they are creating multiple DAOs. So I'm a governor for the incubator DAO. So the incubator DAO, and we're the founding governors, as it were. So it's really important for us to be able to shape the future of what we think is really important for how incubators are selected, how they're attracted, and then how they're looked after during that period. Because once we hand over our governorship, then it goes to somebody else. And they have a number of DAOs to just be able to look at different activities and different projects, was the word that you used, within the Harmony One ecosystem, all looking to be able to make sure that they can grow the Harmony One ecosystem. So there are a number of DAOs, not even just one DAO per token or cryptocurrencies, but a number of DAOs within a subsection of those. And yes, in terms of should we sit back, I think DAOs could be really, really scary. I think if you have a whole bunch of people, if you've got, sorry, I'm thinking as I'm speaking. So if we have the future of the metaverse, if we have the future of augmented reality, and if we have a continued personalized, but not by us, feed of news that makes us believe that everything that we believe is to be the truth and keeps us more entrenched in what we're thinking. And then we have this ability to gather with people around the internet and have it in a mutable way, the way that we choose to govern and reward and behave, then I think that could be quite dangerous. We could have a funded, polarized individual communities. So I think it's really important actually that we do think bigger about what the impacts are. This idea, that technology doesn't care about gender or anything else is, well, technology is being programmed by humans, so I don't understand how that works. A DAO is still a collection of human beings, so I don't quite understand how that as an argument works. And DAOs are definitely an experiment, not the answer, not at this stage.
Thank you. Any more questions or any more comments? Yeah, maybe like a general point in terms of DAOs. Obviously, DAOs at the moment, anyone can create a DAO, so there's no universal crypto DAO. A lot of the projects nowadays like try to decentralize governance and basically create DAOs. So it's kind of, we're having this explosion of them at the moment.
Yes, indeed.
Any more questions or comments? I was gonna say something, but I forgot it, unfortunately.
And there's a few conversations here about sort of some of the absolute rock stars of women in the space.
Yeah.
So if anyone wanted to sort of give it, if we've got time, give a shout out and say, this is one of the rock stars and this is why, and it might just allow some people to be introduced to experts in the area that they didn't yet know. And the more that we can follow these women, the more that we can give them that.
I have a couple of like Twitter threads of like female badasses in the space that I follow that like kick ass in industries that they're in, and I'd be happy to share those threads. It's like, one of those ones to like tag all those badass women,
Yes,
that you know. So I'd be happy to share those on the Telegram. I'll actually just drop a link to our Telegram now so you guys can follow them.
That would be awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I've just shared an article about this NFT artist who goes under the name People Pleaser. She became particularly famous after creating the Uniswap V3 announcement video, which was just stunningly beautiful. And she actually she's part of like a pretty famous DAO now, and she's super awesome. But then apart from her, like Meltem, she is the chief strategy officer of CoinShares, which is a big crypto fund. And she's just incredibly smart, just all around fun and cool and awesome. Like I follow her like on all channels, and I'm a big fan. Actually, one more question that I remembered what I was going to ask about like kind of the geographic aspects, because I feel one really good thing with crypto is that it's a very international community, so it's much more international than like traditional tech. And I feel like what do you think does that mean in terms of let's say like giving women a greater role? Because what we are finding is we are recruiting people in a lot of like non-traditional markets where maybe women are even less likely to work as developers. For example, how do you feel, what role does kind of the geography of crypto play in this question?
I think certainly when it comes to the aspect of diversity, then it's definitely a great thing. We don't want a whole bunch of women in the Western world given opportunities to this whilst we leave our sisters in the vast swathes of the globe behind. So the fact that we have diversity of location is fantastic. What we need to be able to do is make sure that we're tapping into the community of women who would be interested, qualified, whatever it might be, to be aware of these opportunities. Now, everyone is the same, right? We all reach out to our networks, and our networks are generally made up of people who are most like us. So if the majority of these communities are driven by men, then the majority of their networks are men. So we just have to work a bit harder to make sure that we can access female communities and spread the word that way, so that we can have this flexibility of working from home, this flexibility of working across whatever hours that are needed to get the job done, not what hours are needed to be sat in the office. And the opportunities for great paying roles to be spread to these talented women.
Thank you. That makes sense. Any more questions, comments, statements, observations?
Are there other members of the audience who have tried to hire women or who are wondering where they can find the women? And specifically, what have you done and where has it failed? That would be really interesting, because then we can better understand how we can shape what we're doing to reach those people and those objectives.
So I can actually give an example from CoinRule. So in the recent fundraise, we actually introduced into our shareholder agreement the so-called Rooney rule, which requires us to interview like minority candidate for any position that we are hiring for, so that at least we have the obligation to at least interview one minority candidate.
So that's interesting. There's a book called Gender Inclusion by Design, I think it is. Again, when I send all the other resources, I'll send that. There is an issue with having just one minority person on there. And the way that our subconscious bias works is that you're setting them up to fail. Not your intention, but the outcome, and the research suggests that actually that is not the way to do it. There is this rule: if you're hiring for diversity, as for all the right reasons, but you want to make sure that you have a more diverse team. When that first person comes in, whether it's a Black person or a woman, or whether it might be along their whatever their orientation might be, whatever it might be, until you have 30% representation, then that person is a token person who's representing their entire gender or their entire race. So it's not just, well, we hired somebody who didn't work. There's a bit more to actually the numbers of applicants that you need to be able to see before you can start actually hiring differently. And then also be wary of when you're bringing someone in, that they are that token person until the team is bigger. So one of the things that you can do if you're a startup there, as I say, is to be able to reach out and to give that woman the support of other communities so that she's got other people she can speak to professionally. And she's not, and it balances out the environment where in the workplace that she's the only person until such time as you grow a larger team. But I can there's research done on it. So what I'll do is I'll look through it all like when I'm back home and I've got the book in front of me so that you can see what that design practice needs to be, because I love what you're doing, but I would love to help you be more effective based on the research that's out there.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be really, really helpful. Anyone else in the audience who has examples or wants to say something? And don't be shy to say. There's no wrong thing to say, so just jump in.
So I know I've already said a lot today, but Bridget, I just want to thank you so much for talking about this topic for the session today, because I think it's very needed, and I think that a lot of people are too scared to talk about the topic. And just like it's one of those things, like inviting women to the conversation, empowering women to be a part of the crypto industry is one of those things that I don't think we paid enough attention to. But the Ethereum community, and I think like, I don't know if you guys noticed as well, and maybe this can be a debate topic for another day, but I feel like the Ethereum community is actually very welcoming to women in the space versus like some of the other cryptos or
I have felt that. I've been so impressed with the boot camp that they're doing, the Solidity 12-week boot camp that they're doing. I'm learning about diversity and inclusion from them, because they do have people across the globe. So, I mean, we've got a ways to go in the bigger pie in terms of how inclusive we are when it comes to socioeconomic backgrounds. I don't know anyone with disabilities within this sector, but with consensus, you know, they're making sure that, again, we're a global audience, but we only have one language. But so they're looking at languages. They are looking at running a second cohort for those who are in Afghanistan and Haiti, where they've had political and geographical crises, which meant that they haven't been able to attend the standard boot camp. So I would agree with that. I think at the moment, what they're doing is hugely positive when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and including making women feel special, included.
It's not even just women, it's the entire LGBTQ plus community. It's, I mean, like, I definitely do feel like the tides are changing. When I went to my first conference at SEC in 2016, 2017, I actually remember, but I think I was like one of 16 women out of 600 people. When I went again the last time, the numbers were definitely improved, and there was a lot more inclusivity and people actually talking about it. There were dinners, there were conversations, like it's not a taboo topic. And I think that kind of like open to the conversation is something that I appreciate and value like greatly.
Well, I've been doing research since I started the Bigger Pie, because my history, I didn't really tell you about my history, was basically, it's not a diversity and inclusion expert. It's a lived experience of being shut out of career opportunities for no other reason than my gender. A lot of them are illegal practices now, but I'm old enough to have experienced the negative side of that. And then so I became a single mum pretty soon on. And the expectations of a woman to get on with it compared to the expectations of a man to come onto it are huge. So you don't get the same career opportunities, you don't get the same pay. And then you're expected without blinking an eye to be much better at dealing with the care opportunities. I went to Scotland for 3 weeks for the training that was required for the job that I got. And everyone rallied around my ex-husband. They made sure that every day he had some childcare, they prepared food for him, the whole works. Yet when I became a single mum, I didn't see anyone, you know. So there's just so much lived experience of the differences. And I was an IFA, which I mentioned before. What was the point of this? Can't remember. I'm terribly sorry. I do this all the time. Nope, can't remember. There was a purpose for it.
So I think that we had one more question from Den Joe. Den, do you want to go ahead and just ask? Or if...
Okay, I do remember it. So the point is, I've had to study why are women in this disadvantaged position? Why, when I thought that I graduated in the 90s, that we had equity, gender equity, do we not? and why, particularly with women in tech. So the more I've been reading into that, the more of a staunch supporter I actually have become, because it's more upsetting about the stats and the facts.
Thank you.
Invisible Woman is brilliant, yes. And The Mother of Invention is really interesting too, as books.
So just to,
I haven't read The Mother of Invention, but The Invisible Woman is brilliant.
just to get back to the question from Dan Joe.
Sorry.
So the question was, from an investor point of view, where would you advise look at to find blockchain projects where either the founder or the CTO is female?
So you're an investor and you want to find the female-led teams, these communities, 100%. If you share it in these communities that your investors looking for female-led founders, it will spread like wildfire. And I would be happy to start that conversation and spread it to the communities.
Thank you. So I think, do we have any more questions, anyone?
So does everyone know how to get hold of me to follow up on any of these things?
Why don't you share? Yeah, why don't you share maybe even in the chat some of the best ways to contact you?
No worries at all. So you can go to the site, which needs updating, but it's still loads of resources there. And the Telegram group for the women to join is in there. Everything that we do is with everyone else, apart from our Telegram channel where we need a safe space just for women. The email is,
I think, Bridget, I think there was in the link, in the URL, there was a dot too much.
Yes, there was. Yes, there is. Also, I have the fortune of age on my side, so I can't see very well. Does that work?
I just want to
Perfect.
say, because I'm doing the boot camp, the consensus boot camp through the Bigger Pie, and it's been really brilliant, actually. So thank you for that.
You are welcome. So the difference between what we do with than going alone through consensus is actually led by consensus, and they want lots of cohorts because they understand, despite the fact that they have a community, despite the fact that they have trainees and Q&As, people still need to have that extra support with their own communities to be able to get them past the finish line. And that's the difference between 5 to 10% of people passing the course to sort of 50 to 80%, up to 35 to 50%. And we're hoping to get higher than that. So
Brilliant. And I see you have some of the advisors on your page are good friends,
yes,
like Geneviève,
yes,
a very good friend of mine, and also was a speaker at the Crypto Monday a while ago.
I think
yes.
that's the year that she spoke, earlier this year, Geneviève. Yeah,
She speaks all the time.
I know.
Cool. Any more questions, comments?
I'm just reading Devin's comments.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
I think we're all reading Devin's comment.
What do we think about it?
Well, I do think it's interesting. The vast majority, I mean, it's not something I actively keep track of, but there's no question that the vast majority of attendees to our virtual networking events and our face-to-face networking events when we held them were men. I think, if you just look at the array of people who were still sitting in the room tonight, it's predominantly men. I think there's just a small handful of women. And I think it's a problem. It's a problem of that there's a definite lack of women, but there's also a definite lack of people of color. There's a definite lack of people with disabilities. I think that it's indicative of the greater world, unfortunately, today still. It's changing, and it would be nice if this sector could perhaps try and lead the way to be more open and expansive about the kinds of people it recruits, the kind of people it trains. And I think a lot of it comes from training early on, and perhaps going right back into earlier education, into secondary schools, for example, and supporting efforts in progressive schools and maybe not so progressive schools to get children across the board trained in this area.
Having done all the research, the number one thing that we need are role models. It's as simple as that. You can't be what you can't see.
Makes sense.
And if you ask people to name tech leaders, they'll reel off loads of men. And if you ask them to reel off the tech leader who's female, they're stuck. We don't have visible role models of women and people of color. And so why is that? And it's not because they're not educating themselves, it's because they're not getting hired and they're not getting funded. So whatever we can do to give visibility to the people who aren't necessarily, that's something that we can change faster, that we can change the hiring and the funding, is the visibility. So that would be a fantastic way of doing it, because it's, most of us have sight, even if it might be failing. And when you see a panel of people and you see no one who looks like you represented on there, you scroll past.
Sure. But it's interesting that when you do look at senior women in the broad tech sector, my perception is the vast majority of them come out of the finance industries. They're recruited out of private equity, they're recruited out of banking, and they end up then becoming tech leaders, but they're not really tech trained. They haven't evolved up through the tech industries that they're working in. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think
the question is, why is that? Why is it that women who come through the tech sector haven't emerged as tech leaders?
I think in part because there is a relatively small number of them compared to men. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out as one. You would know better than I do.
The entry level of women coming into the space is not reflective of who's at the top. And after 10 years, women are leaving because they're not getting paid, they're not getting promoted, they're not getting hired, they're not given flexibility. So, one or two women can get through. Oh, whoops, I threw my computer on the floor. But we just have structural changes, massive structural changes that need to be done. But the way that we have a more decentralized approach, the way that, and this is why it's really important that we don't have DAOs that really put women off, because the gateway into a DAO is supposedly so much more. Anyone can show up and sit down with a seat at the desk in a DAO. You don't have to go through the 16 recruitment processes that screen out a lot of the people that aren't on this call, because of subconscious bias. But all of the AI research shows it, and all the academia research shows it. You can just pull up a chair and sit down, and if you can do the work, you can get paid for it. So we are changing the way that we're doing business as much as we're changing the way that we look at finance and we value everyone else. So it's exciting, but everything that I read, and which is why I said I'm more passionate about it now, is that the women are doing all the things that they're asked to do. We just have structural challenges that need to be changed.
Yep.
And if there's ways I can help people like Oleg who are trying to make those changes more effective, then I'm very happy.
Cool. Anyone else out there? Speak now.
This is when you find that they've all gone off to make their tea and they've just left themselves on there to look good. Thank you so much.
Praise and appreciation to you, Bridget. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Devin, and I've allowed us to connect as well. Thank you so much to the Crypto Monday team for inviting me not once but twice, and thank you very much for understanding. Do you know, in the end, I didn't get to do anything. I was ill, so it was just as well. It was just as well I'd organised a replacement, because I was in bed feeling very upset and sorry for myself that I'd missed out on 2 opportunities. Thank you, David.
Fantastic. You, thank you so much, Bridget. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Have a wonderful week.
Bridget, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you in December.
In person?
No, we're looking. Sorry, I should probably say. Nice segue there. We're tentatively looking at January. It's going to come down to a venue more than anything else. So if anybody out there has any thoughts about or knows of a venue that might be available, ideally at no cost, although we are talking to some possible new sponsors right now. But we're looking for a venue that we can go back to regularly every month, somewhere dependable, somewhere large enough that we can accommodate, you know, dozens of people and have connectivity so that we can also live stream the event to those people who aren't in London, because our community is growing quite dramatically across the whole UK and across other places. I know there are people I've introduced who are coming into us from places like California and Sweden, and I'm sure Devin and Oleg and the rest of the team are seeing people come in from other parts of the world as well. So any ideas anybody have, please let one of us know. You can always get through to us on Telegram. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.